Hello, welcome to Mac and N. One more thing where we're so sorry to tell you we have news of everybody's favourite smartphone maker being in trouble. Doomed, in fact. They will not be making phones at all in another 5 years, says an analyst. I'm sorry, your favourite smartphone maker is Apple? Well, actually, it's not them. Not this time. Apple's only doomed every other day. Today, it's Samsung, and we'll explain why. We'll also talk today about how Microsoft giveth. No, actually, it's just Microsoft takes away. And I do keep saying we, but we is you, me. Hello, I'm William Gallagher. And there's also, always, Malcolm Owen. Malcolm, hello.
Hello.
Right, I'm in a newsy mood. You're a newsy guy. I want to pile ahead with news. Specifically, first one of all, do you have the skinny for us on Microsoft and what it's done to OneDrive?
What if there were a way to bring everything together in one place? One place that's available on the things you use every day. One place you can share with the people you choose. One place that goes and grows with you. So that what matters is safe and within reach. That's OneDrive. The one place for all your photos, videos, and documents. The one place for everything in your life.
If you remember back to, roughly speaking, this time last year, Microsoft introduced a change to OneDrive for some of its users, which basically meant that if you subscribe to any of the Office 365 packages, you had an unlimited amount of data. You remember that?
Unlimited data? That's that's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, that knocks spots off. Apple's doing that measly 5 gigabytes for iCloud free and things. So, one up to Microsoft there. Infinite, unlimited, unconditional data. What's not to love?
Aside from the fact that, we'll get to that 5 gig in a minute, aside from having unlimited data, they've now decided to pull the plug on it. So all these people who had unlimited cloud storage through OneDrive are now going to have to downgrade the amount of usage that they have and get down to below 1 terabyte. What the amount of storage they had before Microsoft upgraded it last year.
Okay. Less good. Is that the summary, really? Why would they do this?
They're basically doing this because there are some people who are... there's a special term that I'd like to use for them, but unfortunately I'm not allowed to use them on a Safe for Work podcast. But basically they are excessively using the service.
Now, hang on. How can you excessively use an unlimited service?
How about using it to back up multiple PCs to the same storage and keeping your entire movie collection on the cloud storage drives? Somewhere in the region of about 75 terabytes of data.
Yeah. 75 terabytes, it's still pretty infinitely less than unlimited.
True, but at the same time, there's a bound of normality. 1 terabyte of storage before was huge. If you think about it, hard drives, you could still get hard drives that are not measured in terabyte levels.
Mugs, kettles.
You can still buy things which are measured in gigabytes, believe it or not, in this day and age. Cloud storage?
I think we're on slightly different ends of the fence here in that you sound quite sympathetic to Microsoft. And I get the fact that as well as the actual storage, it must be pummeling the system, just uploading and downloading all that stuff. But I think the technical word that I would use that is safe for a family show is duh. You said use it, people use it. I have this thing that Microsoft lives and dies. Microsoft believes in the feature list so that it can have a tick of all the things it's got. But that doesn't mean the features necessarily work, which drives me spare. And in this case, they stop it because people use exactly what it said they could do. So you're sympathetic to Microsoft, and I can understand it, but I'm unimpressed. It makes a big technical advantage into a brief marketing stunt to me.
Well,
don't you think?
Of course, it's expected that some people will swing the lead a little bit, but I'm sorry, 75 terabytes of data.
It's excessive, but
It's excessive to the point where if I got every single high capacity drive I can get from my local electronics retailer, then I'm going to end up having a computer that's going to be full up with drives and still not going to be anywhere near 75 terabytes.
I don't think it's going to rival Amazon Web Services, for example. Businesses aren't going to do this stuff. It is just going to be your excessive hoarder of data. And how many of those can there really be? Apparently enough for it to be an issue. But Microsoft they have the boon of saying, duh, look at all this. And now having already positioned themselves as much better than Apple's 5 gigabytes, I mean much better, they're now just kind of quite a bit better. And I find that disappointing.
You keep on saying the 5 gigabytes. There's actually something about that. OneDrive's free allocation has always been 15 gigabytes. And now they're reducing the free allocation down to just 5.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry, we've been talking different terms. I meant the 5 gigabytes that Apple gives for iCloud for free. So now Microsoft is also giving a free. I mean, we may disagree on unlimited.
No, they were giving 15 gig before for free anyway.
So now they're not.
But they're just bringing that down from 15 to 5, which is, at least for free users, a little bit annoying. But then again, it's a free service. You should not be complaining about it.
I mean, I complain enough about Apple's free 5 gigs. I mean, there is an argument I like that they're selling iPhones with 32 and 64 and 128 gigabytes. Give us some space to back up the whole thing. I mean, I've been driven to buy more iCloud space just for backup issues. But I'm amused then that Microsoft have reduced down to exactly the same as Apple. Does that mean Apple, I don't know, got it right and Microsoft were daft trying to share hard drive space with the world?
It's difficult to really tell. I mean, I don't know whether Apple is right or wrong about it. You may be able to say, yes, they're right because Microsoft are changing it to that. But really speaking, not really. It doesn't really matter. All these are free advertisements for the paid services.
It's the change, I think. I get what you're saying, and we're not going to agree on this because I'm just knocked at you tell me one thing, you do something else, which I find very typical of Microsoft, and it's one of the typical reasons I dislike Microsoft so regularly. Let me talk about somebody other than Microsoft then. This week, Larry Page from Google has been interviewed about, very specifically, amongst many other things, but at one point very specifically, about the fact that Steve Jobs once said to him that Google was wrong to do so much. Google should focus on just a few things.
You're doing everything. I mean, you want to remake the energy business, you want to remake the telecommunications business, you want to remake the transportation business, you want to... so can you talk about how... I mean, you heard this from Steve Jobs, I understand. He said you're doing too many things.
Yeah, I mean, he was right. I mean, he did fine as well.
But you haven't slowed down. I mean, that's why we called you the most ambitious CEO in the universe. And the truth is, we didn't have data on the whole universe, but we it's a lot you're biting off.
Yeah, no, I worry about that, in fact. And I think for me, I mentioned how I wanted to make a company kind of for engineers, like thinking about it that way. I think also as an entrepreneur who had started Google, trying to make a company for entrepreneurs also is something I think we're striving for. I really like going and talking to the people who run our data centers. But I ask them how does that transformer work? How does the power come in? What do we pay for that? I ask lots and lots and lots of questions. And I'm thinking about it kind of both as a entrepreneur and as a business person. And I'm thinking, what are those opportunities? So I think in any big business, any of the people here, there's so many little things, that seem like a little annoyance. Like, I remember we're having a problem getting transformers. Take them a year for a transformer to show up. That's a problem, but it's also an opportunity. Why does it take a year? Why does it get shipped on a train car and then a special truck? And then it takes a long time to arrive. Is that really the right solution? It makes you wonder.
So how do you decide which of these problems / opportunities to take on? I mean, we were having dinner with Craig Venter. He's focused on extending people's lives. You're doing the same thing.
Yeah, I love talking to Craig about it. So.
Yeah. So you're going to be in the car business.
Well, we're making self-driving cars.
You're putting balloons up over a big part of the world to provide internet business. How do you make decisions? How do you decide which of these areas you're going to go into?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most difficult things. I think some of it comes from experience. Some of it comes from just judgment, the right people to judge. Some of it comes from having the right teams in place. A lot of times, many of these ideas, you have this observation like, oh, it sucks it took an hour, a year to get the transformer. And then 10 years later, that might turn into a business.
Last week, you see, I regard this as a chat, but actually, for some reason, we slice this chat up into episodes and we put them on podcasts. Why we three don't just ring each other, beyond me. But in last week's episode, I mentioned this. 30% of customers who bought iPhones and were replacing some old phone were Android users. They didn't say how many people were replacing, so we have no possible way of knowing what the number is. We just know it has to be a lot less than 14 million. So we just cannot measure it. And presumably there must be iPhone users switching to Android for some reason. Can't think why, but there must be somewhere. Maybe because of all the James Bond advertising. That'll be it. So it's just a meaningless figure, isn't it? It's an impressive, meaningless figure. Or am I wrong and actually the maths works out and you Android users understand these things better than I do?
Sorry, the James Bond advertising?
Maybe it hasn't reached you then. It isn't working. The new film Spectre, I'm seeing more ads for products that are in it than I am for the film. So there's an Xperia phone something that apparently Mr. Bond or somebody in the film uses and I don't know, saves the world with or shoots somebody with. Is there an app on Android for shooting people from your phone?
No.
Bond, it's Moneypenny. I've got your phone. Will you do me a favour next time? Go and pick it up yourself.
In last week's episode, I mentioned that there are all these ads for the new James Bond film, but actually all I keep seeing are ads for products that are in the film, such as Xperia mobile phone for it. I've seen many more ads than I have trailers or film posters. This week, we learned that it's actually about that same Xperia phone. It's clearly in the film, it's in these billboards. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know now that James Bond himself not only doesn't use it, Daniel Craig, the actor, and director Sam Mendes refused to allow James Bond to handle this. Craig himself was personally offered $5 million to carry this Android phone and didn't. I'm assuming the screenwriters were offered a lot of money as well, but for some reason that's not being reported. As an Apple user who doesn't like Android, I am tickled by this, and the leaked email from Columbia saying that the Sony James Bond only uses the best and this Sony phone is not the best, that gave me a chuckle. But actually, aren't all technology companies doing exactly the same thing? Apple's everywhere in this, sometimes to the point of ridiculousness. Like in Independence Day, when an Apple PowerBook somehow connects to an alien computer, presumably over USB or whatever they had then, and that alien computer is running at least Linux, if not OS 10, and they can see this ridiculousness just to get an Apple computer in there.
The unexplained phenomenon is headed for Moscow.
When you've got just 28 minutes to save the entire planet.
The clock is ticking.
You better hope you got the right computer.
Is film now just a technology advert? And as a technology fan, do you object to that?
If you think that Sony wanting to spend $18 million marketing Spectre as part of its advertising is a problem, or Samsung willing to apparently pay $5 million to Daniel Craig himself and then spending $50 million in total promoting the film and promoting his products at the same time is bad, consider if they decided to give in and have Bond holding these phones and saying, I'm using a Samsung Galaxy S4 or whatever phone they decide to put in at this time to save the world by deactivating that nuclear bomb. If they decided to open themselves up to other more consumer-friendly brands in other parts of the film, you could imagine him, just off the top of my head, I could imagine him driving around being chased by baddies while driving a Skoda Octavia.
Or ordering Pepsi Max, shaken not stirred.
I'm sorry, you can't shake a Pepsi Max.
You can have a good go. I've dropped the bottles.
Well, you can certainly shake it, but then you're going to have to sit down and wait for it to stop being so volatile.
The anticipation of a good, well-poured Pepsi Max. You just don't appreciate the finer things in life, do you? We talked about Samsung there, and Samsung comes up a lot in One More Thing because they make things. But this week, actually now, they are doomed. I'm kind of tickled by this as well because it's doomed in the same way that Apple is always doomed. So I don't know whether I believe it, but actually this time I think there's an interesting element to it. I'm not going to go so far as to say that I think it's right, but I'm intrigued by it. It's a company called Creative Strategies. I've never heard of them before, and this is probably why we're hearing of them for the first time now. I can't pronounce his name. Ben Bajarin, Bajarin. He's a researcher there, and he is stating that Samsung is in trouble and positing that it could be out of the phone business completely in 5 years. Now, he's obviously pointing to all the things we know, that Apple has the high end of the business and that now the low end has been taken away by clones of clones of clones kind of thing. The thing I utterly love is that he claims Samsung's problem is that it is suffering from the innovator's dilemma. The definition of that, according to him, is that you create something great and then someone comes in and makes it cheaper. I find that laughable because, of course, in this case, it's Apple that innovated first. You can argue that Samsung's done lots of nice things. They kind of chucked everything at it and some of the features are good, but it's like saying the person who added the radio to a car did as well as the person who designed the car. And I also find it laughable because if the innovator's dilemma is true, and it sounds quite economically sensible and reasonable, Apple has escaped it completely. It's still innovating. It's been threatened by cheaper models, but it's not really being dented by any of them. It is still the one company that makes any money out of mobile phones. Is it a point where Samsung actually should just give up and go back to making TV sets like it still does successfully, I think?
It's a difficult one to say, really. The key point here is 5 years. I don't think anyone really knows what they're going to be doing in 5 years.
I'm going to be running the world, I decided earlier. Aren't you?
Well, I believe in 5 years I will be representing Great Britain in Miss World. No, it's not going to happen. That's never going to happen.
Okay. Well, actually, my secret ambition, if we're going to be honest about this, is that I'd like to be the first man on the moon.
It could possibly happen.
Think about it. A couple of challenges there. Yeah, I have to, some obstacles, but What's an ambition without obstacles? I mean, I'm asking you about Samsung particularly because you're an Android user and you like Android. It makes no difference to me whether Samsung's in this or not because I don't like the products particularly. As someone who presumably would miss, I mean, am I right that Samsung is effectively the best Android manufacturer? Is that just a oversimplification?
That is an extremely oversimplification. If you look at the marketplace, you've got all these different devices that are mostly the same but are slightly different in terms of higher end features or where the main focus is of each device. For example, we look at Sony devices and we think, okay, if you get a Sony smartphone, you're going to be looking for that 20 megapixel camera. If you're looking at LG, you might be looking for the thing that has the large screen or the curved screen or things like that. I mean, Samsung's certainly there. It's certainly in the mix. But at the same time, I can't really say in 5 years they're not going to be making phones. I mean, on the one hand, you look at Sony and you see that they've been getting hammered in terms of smartphone sales year on year. And then you see that Samsung's having a slight problem as well. And because Sony's apparently considering the possibility of getting rid of the mobile phone business, like they did with the PC business and are trying to do with the TV business, that they might do the same with the phones. But then you look at Samsung and you think, they might start doing that as well. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll suddenly come out with a device that blows the market tremendously and it does a huge amount of sales in an iPhone style. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We won't know.
So we cannot say Samsung is dead in a week or that Samsung will take over the world in a fortnight. Therefore, you and I could never be analysts, could we?
The only reason that I could think of this guy coming out and saying they'll be out of the smartphone business within 5 years is because he wants people to listen to him and therefore earn money from telling people what he thinks they should be listening to.
So we are giving creative strategies researcher Ben Bajarin the oxygen of publicity.
That's basically what this is. I mean, he may have a point, he may not. We don't know. But at the same time, even if Samsung gives up on the phone business, it's entirely within their right. If Apple suddenly decided, okay, we're not going to bother making iPhones anymore, I know it's a difficult thing to even contemplate.
I am shuddering here.
But any company that sees that one of their products is not doing as well may want to go in and say, okay, we'll make this change, see if it works. If not, we might cut it. Any company will do that, even Apple.
Okay, let me cut off the oxygen supply to this guy, but with one last question. As an Android user and appreciating the Android ecosphere as you do, are you saying actually you personally wouldn't be that fussed if Samsung just stopped?
Okay, put it this way. HTC has been having a huge problem with in terms of revenues and sales in the last couple of years. Its lunch has been picked up by someone else. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, if they go, it doesn't really matter that much. I'm not emotionally invested in HTC, in Samsung, in LG, in, for want of a better phrase, BlackBerry. I'm not emotionally invested, so it doesn't really matter, fundamentally speaking.
I think you could well argue that I am emotionally invested in Apple and the iPhone, and that's probably a interesting psychological business. It would be a difficulty for me if Apple stopped doing this on every level. But actually, as much as I am wedded to iOS, as much as I find Android just kind of unfinished and messy, if it were only Apple left, I think that would be a very bad thing, wouldn't you say?
Well, I wouldn't really say it's a case of if Apple was the only one left. Think of it like if Android wasn't there, what would Apple be going against?
the rubbish phones that existed before Apple invented the iPhone?
I was thinking more along the lines of Windows Phone and whatever BlackBerry's thinking of doing now.
I don't really consider BlackBerry an issue anymore, and Windows never became an issue. But in the absence of Android, of course there are people who don't like Apple, and they would be the only viable alternatives. As soon as that's the case, they have greater success, therefore greater investment, therefore they would become a viable competitor and would innovate, hopefully, along the way. So we would be okay if Samsung left. We'd be all right if Android died. It's just basically Apple and iOS that we need to survive. Okay, I'm glad we're in agreement on that. Let's put aside looking into the future and instead look at now, specifically this week. Thingies of the week. I have something I'm dying to tell you about, but you've always got something really different and clever and interesting. So you've got to tell me, Malcolm, do you have a stunning thingy of the week this week?
This is actually less a thing, more a warning to people. We've now entered the month of November, and that means that we are going to be bombarded with television advertising saying it's coming up to Christmas, buy this, buy that, buy the other. Every year I get annoyed by advertising becoming more and more tugging at the heartstringsy, and I think other people are as well. As soon as Halloween ended and we just crept into November, the marketing started. And this is just a thing to say to people, when you look at the TV, when you're watching TV, don't worry at all if what you're seeing on TV is an advert saying, buy this stuff for Christmas, have a good family time. Just calm down, don't worry, it'll all be over soon, in about 2 months. Just calm your heels.
Yeah, I feel you're building to something, yes.
Well, in a way I am. It's more a case of me sitting down and thinking, people really need to calm down about this stuff. We've already had our first casualty in terms of the Christmas advertising war. The Guardian's already reported that PayPal has already had complaints because of its attempt at a John Lewis-style advert.
I have bad news, Toby. I don't think we're getting any Christmas presents this year. Have you noticed how Mum and Dad have been around so much lately? Normally this time of year, they're out shopping. Need any help bringing the bags in?
I've got any.
Is Gran coming to look after us this weekend?
No, sweetie.
Don't be sad, Toby. You pick anything you like from my side of the room to be your gift.
It ran during the X Factor on Sunday, the X Factor being a singing show where people get to laugh at Simon Cowell being mean. And the advert itself was basically two kids thinking that their parents were trying to buy Christmas presents using PayPal and bringing them home. And the ASA, the Advertising Standards Authority, had more than 230 complaints because of this one advert for claiming that Santa isn't real. Far be it from me to say whether something exists or not in terms of a seasonal event or a person who may or may not have existed or anything else like that. And there's many discussions we can go off there, but for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to go into that. What I would suggest is people need to calm down, chill about this. It is only a holiday that people need to deal with.
I hear your point, Malcolm, but actually I would like to just state on behalf of MacNN.com and particularly on behalf of one more thing. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Now, there is also my thingy of the week, far less contentious. Nomo bags. They make bags and they're gorgeous, and we've written about them on MacNN. I've enthused about them on One More Thing many a time, but now they have something new and it just entertains me so much. All it is a leather luggage label. It's not a bag. You attach it to whatever bag you've got, but on the big one side, bright colours, very vivid, very big, very strong, and it just says emotional baggage. That's it. I believe it's available worldwide. It's certainly available now in the UK. Go have a look for them on nomobags.com. That's KNOMOBAGS.com. Nomobags, one word, .com. Emotional baggage. Maybe it says a lot about me that appeals to me so much, but it does. Oh, and it comes in 3 colours. What else could you want? But more news, hopefully less contentious news, and more thingies of the week, which will be what we'll be here for next week. So it's goodbye from me and Malcolm.
Goodbye.